Solitude, Kansas, 1883. Colt Bishop had been standing outside the church for the better part of an hour, dressed in his one good shirt, watching the road for the woman he was supposed to marry within the hour, when Beatrice Wren finally appeared. Not on her brother's arm, not in the wedding dress the whole town had heard she'd been sewing for a month, but walking alone across the churchyard in a plain traveling dress, a small leather money pouch held out in front of her like something that had grown too heavy to carry any further. A few early wedding guests already gathered near the church steps went quiet, watching, sensing something had gone wrong before either Colt or Beatrice said a single word. "I can't marry you like this," she said, stopping close enough that he could see her hands were shaking, her voice carrying just far enough for the nearest guests to catch every word. "Not with your family's money sitting between us, like the whole thing was ever a debt to be settled, instead of a choice either of us actually made freely, with clear eyes and nothing owed." She pressed the pouch into his hands, nearly $400, every cent her family had managed to scrape together over 3 desperate months. A fraction of what her father had owed his, but more than Colt had expected to see again in his lifetime. Coins and small bills together, clearly gathered from every corner of the house they could still call their own. Colt looked at the money, then at her, taking in the whole of her, the shaking hands, the plain traveling dress, the guests already whispering behind them. "Why bring it back today?" he said slowly, instead of simply not showing up at all. It was, Beatrice would understand only after she'd answered him honestly, the one question that mattered more than any vow either of them had been about to make inside that church, more than any dress or ledger or handshake, 9 years old. Beatrice's father, Everett Wren, had borrowed $600 from Colt's father 9 years earlier, the summer a drought nearly took the family's ranch along with half the county's cattle, and had sealed the loan the old-fashioned way. 2 men still sometimes did business in that part of Kansas. Not with a note at the bank, but with a handshake and an understanding, spoken plainly between the 2 of them over supper one evening, that the debt would settle, eventually, through the marriage of Everett's only daughter to the elder Bishop's son once both children came of age. There was no bank within a day's ride capable of lending a struggling rancher money on terms he could actually survive. Only neighbors, memory, and a man's given word, which in drought years counted for about as much as any signed contract, for better and for worse. Droughts like the one that summer had a way of reshaping entire counties in a single dry season. Cattle sold at a loss, land mortgaged twice over, families like the Wrens surviving one bad harvest away from losing everything they'd spent a generation building, a fear that never entirely left a family once it had taken hold that deep. Handshake arrangements between neighboring ranchers, unrecorded anywhere but in a private ledger and 2 men's memory, were common enough in that kind of desperate year, and rarely questioned by anyone outside the 2 families involved. Nobody had called it a sale outright, though everyone involved understood plainly enough what it actually was. Everett had insisted, right up until his own death 3 years back, that he'd have wanted the match regardless, that Colt Bishop was simply the best young man in the county, and the debt was only ever incidental to that fact. Beatrice had grown up believing that story, more or less completely, right up until her father's death forced her older brother Thomas to finally show her the actual ledger. $600, plus interest neither family had ever formally agreed on, still standing unpaid against her own future. A debt she'd never once been told existed until it was already hers to carry. Thomas had pushed the wedding forward within a year of their father's death, the Wren ranch struggling badly enough by then that the marriage represented not just honor kept, but survival plainly needed. Colt's family connections, Colt's willingness to forgive the remaining debt as part of the arrangement, Colt's land bordering their own water rights. In a year when water mattered more than almost anything else in Kansas, more even than pride, Beatrice had said yes. She told herself, through months of careful courtship and a wedding dress sewn by lamplight, that she was saying yes to Colt himself, a man she'd genuinely come to like across 18 months of supervised visits and church socials. She had not entirely convinced herself of that by the morning of her own wedding, staring at the dress hanging on her door and understanding with sudden and total clarity that she could not walk into that church without knowing for certain which reason had actually brought her there. Colt Bishop was 31, had inherited both his father's ranch and his father's debt ledger 4 years back, and had spent most of the engagement quietly hoping Beatrice would never learn just how plainly the arrangement had been written down in his father's own careful hand. He'd liked her from the first supervised visit, long before either of them had any real say in whether liking each other mattered to the outcome. She was sharper than most of the county gave her credit for, quick to catch him in a lazy argument, entirely unimpressed by the fact that his family had more land than hers. He'd found himself, across 18 months, actually courting her in whatever narrow space the arrangement allowed for it, bringing her books instead of flowers, arguing cattle prices with her at socials while her brother hovered nearby, pretending not to listen, learning the particular tilt of her head that meant she'd caught him in a weak argument before he'd fully realized it himself. He'd never once told her he could have forgiven the debt outright, years ago, without requiring the marriage at all. His own father had died believing the match was destiny, dressed up as convenience. Colt had inherited that belief along with the ledger, and had told himself more than once that pointing out the debt could simply be forgiven would only complicate a courtship that seemed, on its own separate merits, to be going somewhere good. Regardless, it was easier. Some cowardly part of him had reasoned across 4 years to let an old arrangement do the difficult work of bringing them together, rather than trust his own courage to ask her plainly. He hadn't expected her to arrive at the church with the money instead of the dress. Watching her hands shake around the pouch, he knew plainly enough. He should have said the quiet part out loud a long time before she'd had to walk across a churchyard to force the question herself. "Because I couldn't stand at that altar not knowing," Beatrice said, answering his question with her chin lifted, despite the tremor still in her hands. "Whether I was marrying you or marrying my way out of a debt my own father signed away before I was old enough to have any say in it. I needed to know which one it was before I said any vows I couldn't take back, before the church door closed behind me and made it too late to ask." "And which is it?" Colt asked. "Now that you're standing here, having given the money back instead of simply walking away entirely." Beatrice hadn't fully considered that question until he asked it, and found, turning it over in the churchyard's midday heat, that the honest answer surprised her, arriving slower and more complicated than she'd expected any answer of hers to arrive that morning. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I know I couldn't marry you today, with that money sitting unpaid between us. I don't know if that means I don't want to marry you at all, or if it just means I needed to hand back what was never mine to marry away in the first place, before I could figure out the rest of it, honestly." Colt looked down at the pouch in his hands, weighing something considerably heavier than $400, his jaw working through whatever he was about to say next. "Then let's figure out the rest of it honestly," he said, "starting with a fact my own father should have made plain to yours 9 years ago. I could have forgiven this debt at any point in the last 4 years, Beatrice. Forgave it in my own mind the day I inherited the ledger. I just never told you, because some part of me was afraid of exactly what you're doing right now. Finding out whether you'd still choose me once the money wasn't holding the door shut behind you." Word of the canceled wedding reached the Wren ranch before Beatrice herself did, and she found her brother waiting on the porch, his face carrying an anger she recognized from every hard season since their father's death. "You gave back the only thing standing between this family and losing the ranch outright," Thomas said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Do you understand what you've done?" Bishop was prepared to forgive that debt as part of the marriage. "Without the marriage, we owe him $400 we've already handed over, and still don't have a wedding to show for the sacrifice." "He offered to forgive it regardless," Beatrice said, meeting her brother's eyes without flinching. "Told me himself in the churchyard, not 20 minutes ago." Thomas's anger faltered, replaced by something more calculating and cold. Then why hand it back at all if he'd already decided to forgive it? "Because I needed him to say so before I married him," Beatrice said. "Not after, when it would have been easy to wonder for the rest of my life whether the forgiveness came because he wanted me or because a wedding was simpler than collecting a debt from his own bride's family. I needed the two things separated, Thomas, even if separating them cost us the easy path entirely." "The easy path was the only path we had," Thomas said, his voice rising now, something desperate underneath the anger. "You've traded our family's survival for your own peace of mind, and I'm not sure I'll ever understand a choice like that. Not with everything riding on it the way it was." "Maybe you don't have to understand it fully," Beatrice said quietly. "Maybe you just have to trust that I know something about my own marriage that a ledger never could." Colt rode out to the Wren ranch 3 days later, not to see Beatrice, but to see Thomas directly. The ledger itself tucked into his coat pocket. He didn't bother dismounting all the way, swinging one leg over the saddle and staying half-mounted, as though the whole errand wouldn't take long. "I hear you're telling half the county your sister ruined this family's chances," Colt said. "I'd like to correct that version of events before it travels any further, since I don't imagine you've been telling it kindly." "She gave back the money," Thomas said, arms crossed, clearly bracing for an argument he'd already decided he was owed. "What version of events would you prefer?" "The true one," Colt said, and pulled the ledger from his coat, tearing the page recording the original debt cleanly from its binding in front of him. The sound of the paper tearing louder in the quiet yard than either man expected. "This debt is forgiven. Has been since the moment your sister proved she'd rather risk this family's ranch than marry me for the wrong reason. I'd have forgiven it years ago if I'd had the sense to say so plainly, instead of letting two dead fathers' handshake do my talking for me." Thomas stared at the torn page, some of the fight visibly draining out of him. "Why would you forgive it now, with no marriage to show for it?" "Because the marriage was never supposed to be the payment," Colt said. "It just took your sister walking across a churchyard with money I never should have let either of our families treat as currency to make that plain to me. Whatever happens between Beatrice and me from here happens because we choose it separately from this ledger, not because your family owes mine anything at all." Beatrice heard about the torn ledger page from her brother that evening, delivered with considerably less anger than his tone 3 days before. Something closer to bewildered respect replacing it, though he still wouldn't quite meet her eyes while telling it. "He forgave the whole debt," Thomas said. "No marriage required. Wrote out here himself to make sure I understood that plainly. Tore the page out in front of me like it weighed nothing at all." Beatrice found Colt at his own ranch the following afternoon. The ledger's absence from his coat pocket, the first thing she noticed when he came out to meet her. His shirt sleeves rolled from a morning's work. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Wasn't doing it for credit," Colt said. "Was doing it because you were right in that churchyard, whether either of us wanted to admit it plainly at the time. That debt should never have been standing between us in the first place at all, whether we ended up married or not. Figured the only honest thing left to do was remove it from the equation entirely. So whatever choice you make next, you're making it free and clear. And if I choose not to marry you at all, Beatrice asked. "Now that the debt's forgiven regardless? Then I'll have lost a woman I genuinely come to love across 18 months of courtship that had nothing to do with any ledger," Colt said. "And I'll have kept my self-respect intact regardless, which is worth something even on the days it doesn't feel like enough." She didn't have an answer for him yet, and they both understood that the coming week, whatever she decided in it, would settle a question neither a torn page nor a broken engagement could answer for her. She sat with that answer for the better part of a week, walking the fence line alone most mornings. Turning over 18 months of courtship she'd never fully trusted her own feelings about, uncertain how much of what she felt for Colt had been genuine and how much had simply been a woman making the best of an arrangement she hadn't chosen. Her neighbor Sadie Bell caught her at the mercantile midweek, setting down her own basket to ask plainly what half the county was already whispering about. "Everyone's saying you called it off," Sadie said. "Are you all right? You don't have to answer if it's not my business. But you've had a look about you all week, like you're carrying something heavy." "I don't know yet if I called it off or just delayed it," Beatrice admitted. "I keep trying to work out whether what I feel for him is real, separate from everything else tangled up in it." "Sounds to me," Sadie said, "like you already know the answer, and you're just scared of trusting it." She picked her basket back up. "Most women I know never got asked that question at all. Seems worth taking the week to answer it properly, if you've been given the chance." Beatrice thought about that the rest of the walk home, and found, examining the question honestly for the first time, without a debt or a wedding date pressing on the answer, that Sadie had likely been right. She missed him within 2 days. Not the security his land represented, not the relief of a debt forgiven, but the actual company of a man who'd argued cattle prices with her at church socials and brought her books instead of flowers, and never once, across 18 months, treated her opinion as less important than his own. She missed the particular way he listened when she disagreed with him, weighing her arguments seriously instead of simply waiting for his turn to speak again. She found him mending fence on the north section, the same stretch of land that had once represented her family's water rights and their survival. Watching him work with no wasted motion, no hurry, as though the fence had all the time in the world, and so did he. Wrong question. She'd had it wrong all week. "I've been trying to work out how much of what I feel for you is real," she told him. "Separate from the debt, separate from the wedding that almost happened. Sadie Bell set me straight at the mercantile, more or less. The question was never whether my feelings were real. It's whether I was brave enough to trust them once nothing was forcing my hand anymore." "And what did you decide?" Colt asked, setting down his tools, giving her his full and unhurried attention the way he always had, the fence half-mended behind him, forgotten entirely. "That I love you," Beatrice said plainly, without the tremor that had shaken her hands in the churchyard a week before. "Not because of land or debt or anything my father and yours ever shook hands over. Because you're the only man I've ever met who cared more about whether I trusted my own choice than about whether that choice happened to be convenient for you." Colt crossed the distance between them, the fence and the wire cutters forgotten entirely. "Then I'd like to ask you something," he said, "and I want you to know there's no ledger attached to the answer this time. No family debt riding on whichever way you decide. Will you marry me, Beatrice Wren? Not because your father owed mine anything. Because I've spent 18 months falling for a woman sharp enough to walk away from a debt disguised as a wedding, and I don't intend to spend the rest of my life without her." "Yes," Beatrice said, and felt the word land entirely differently than it would have a week before, in a churchyard, with $400 sitting between them, like a question neither of them had been brave enough yet to ask honestly. This time, it felt like a door opening, rather than one quietly closing behind her. Thomas came to the second wedding differently than he'd approached the first, having spent the intervening weeks reckoning in his own quiet way with exactly how much of his anger in the churchyard had been about his sister's happiness and how much had simply been about his own fear of losing the ranch. "I owe you an apology," he told Beatrice the morning of the ceremony, watching her fasten the same dress she'd nearly worn to the first abandoned wedding, his hands unusually still for a man who fidgeted constantly under normal circumstances. "I was more frightened for the ranch than I was thinking clearly about what was fair to ask of you. Colt, forgiving that debt without conditions taught me something about the difference between survival and decency I should have already known. Something Father probably knew too, and never quite managed to say out loud." "You were scared," Beatrice said gently. "I understand scared better than I let on most days. Doesn't make it right how hard I pushed you into this," Thomas said. "For what it's worth, I think you found the better man by refusing the easy path instead of taking it. Wish I'd had that kind of nerve myself, more often than I have, instead of always reaching for whatever kept us safest in the moment." Beatrice and Colt married that autumn in the same small church, with considerably less debt and considerably more certainty than the wedding that hadn't happened months before. The pews filled with half the county, curious enough about the story to attend regardless of the gossip it had briefly generated. The Wren Ranch survived that hard year and several after it, not through forgiveness alone, but through the water rights Colt shared freely once the two properties' fortunes became genuinely intertwined by marriage, rather than by an old ledger neither of them had ever asked to inherit. Water rights disputes settled more of Kansas's neighborly quarrels in that period than almost any other kind of disagreement, and the ease with which Colt and Beatrice's combined land shared its single reliable creek became, in time, something neighboring families pointed to as a model rather than an exception. The drought years that followed tested both families in turn, and both held, leaning on each other in ways neither Everett Wren nor the elder Bishop had likely ever imagined when they'd shaken hands 9 years before. Colt kept the torn ledger page in a drawer at the house they built together, not as a trophy, but as a reminder, he told Beatrice once, of exactly how close he'd come to marrying her without ever finding out whether she'd have chosen him freely at all. A thought that still occasionally woke him uneasy in the night. Even years later, Thomas married 2 years later himself to a woman from the next county over, and made a quiet point at his own wedding of telling anyone who asked that no debt or ledger had anything to do with his own choice. A fact he seemed unusually proud to mention, given how little anyone had actually asked. He and Beatrice grew closer in the years that followed than they'd ever managed while their father was alive. The old resentments of that difficult year slowly worn smooth by ordinary family life. The question that changes everything in this story isn't the one Colt asked in the churchyard, though that's the one that opens the door. It's the one Beatrice finally asked herself, alone, walking a fence line a week later. Not whether her feelings were real, but whether she was brave enough to trust them once nothing was forcing her hand. I think that's a harder question than it sounds. It's easy to know what you feel when circumstance makes the choice for you, when a debt or a deadline or somebody else's expectation decides the outcome before you've had to examine your own heart honestly. It's considerably harder to trust a feeling once every external reason for it has been removed, and all that's left is the plain, unforced truth of what you actually want. Most people never get handed that test at all. Their circumstances simply carry them along, and they never have to find out whether they'd have chosen the same path freely. Colt gave Beatrice that harder question by giving up his leverage first. Most people, holding that kind of power over someone they loved, would have found a reason to keep it a while longer, just in case. A small hedge against being wrong about her, a quiet insurance policy dressed up as patience. He tore the page out before he even knew what her answer would be, which strikes me as the rarer kind of courage in a story like this one, rarer even than Beatrice's walk across that churchyard. Thank you, truly, for riding with me today. Until next time, keep riding.